What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. Today, I'm doing my future 2024 NASCAR Cup Series driver lineup predictions. Keep in mind, this is for the next few years, so things could absolutely change in regards to the 2024 driver lineup, but this, my opinion, will be the lineup for the 2024 season. Let's go and just jump straight into the driver lineup. We're going to start off with the double zero car for StarCom Racing. I don't think that there are going to be any changes in regards to StarCom Racing. I think Quinn Houff, even a few years down the road, is going to remain with StarCom Racing. I think Quinn Houff is going to sign at least a 2 or 3 year contract extension with StarCom Racing for him being there for at least a few years. I think that Quinn Houff is going to be in the double zero car once again in 2024. I think he'll be back in his car for the next couple years. Up next, we're going to talk about the one car for Kaulig Racing. I think Kaulig Racing is going to make a power play, and I think that they are going to expand to a 3-car operation by this point in 2024. And for the driver of the one, that is going to be driven by Kaz Grala. Now, Kaz Grala has been driving for Kaulig Racing in the Cup Series in 2021, currently at the moment, in a couple of the Super Speedway races. I think at this point, he'll be running full-time for Kaulig probably by 2023, and I think that he'll be running Xfinity Series by this point before jumping up the Cup, and I think that at this point, Kaz Grala will end up in the one car for Kaulig Racing. I think he drives the one car in 2024 at this point. Up next, we're going to talk about the 2-car for Team Penske. Nothing's going to change here. Austin Cindric will be back in the 2-car by this point in 2024. Austin Cindric being the son of Tim Cindric, nothing is going to change. Austin Cindric, of course, I think will be winning a lot more races by this point in 2024. I wouldn't be shocked if he's already won 5 or 6 races by this point because he'll be full-time by for the upcoming 2022 season. I think Austin Cindric will be back in the 2 full-time by the point of 2024. He'll be driving a 2-car in 2024. Up next, we're going to talk about the 3-car for Richard Childress Racing. Now, there had been talk back in 2021 that there was potentially going to be a sell for RCR, but I think Richard Childress Racing is still going to be continuing by this point in 2024, and I think Austin Dillon is going to be remaining in the organization for them. Now, Austin Dillon, I believe, will be 34 years of age around this point in 2024. So he's going to be one of the more veteran drivers in NASCAR at this point. I think by this point he'll have a few more victories in NASCAR, and I think he'll still be driving the flagship number 3 car for Rich Childress Racing. He's a grandson. You're not going to be seeing any changes in regards to number 3 car. Up next, we're going to talk about the 4-car for Stewart-Haas Racing. I think by this point there is going to be a change in regards to who's going to be driving the 4-car for Stewart-Haas Racing. I think Kevin Harvick is going to announce retirement in the 2023 season, and I think that his replacement is a driver that is currently in the KHI management group, the driver currently racing in the number 37 for the Cup Series, Ryan Preece. I don't think Ryan Preece is going to be returning to JTG Doherty Racing, even though they signed a major sponsorship with Bimbo Bakeries, basically. I think that he's going to be out of this team at the end of the 2021 season. However, I think he's going to move down to Xfinity Series and take over the 98 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. And I think that eventually in the coming years, in 2024, he's going to be the replacement for Kevin Harvick in the 2024 season. I think Ryan Preece will be in the 4 car in 2024. Up next, we're going to talk about the 5-car for Hendrick Motorsports. I do not think anything's going to change. I think Kyle Larson at this point will still be driving the 5-car. I also think at this point Kyle Larson will be a Cup Series champion, whether it's in 2021, 2022, or 2023. I think he'll be a Cup Series champion. I also think that his contract is going to get extended a lot longer than it is now. I think Kyle Larson will be seen pretty much for the rest of his career. Kyle Larson at this point will be 32 years of age around 2024, and I think that he'll have a lot more Cup Series victories, and he will continue driving the 5-car full-time in the 2024 season. I think Kyle Larson remains in the 5-car. Up next, we're going to talk about the 6-car for Roush Fenway Racing. This once again will be continued to be driven by Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski will be in his 3rd full-time year with the Roush Fenway organization. Now, Brad Keselowski will be 40 years old up to this point, but his performance I do not think is going to slow down. I think he's going to continue to show a lot of speed, and I think he's going to continue to show a lot of progress as time goes on. And I think also at this point, the 6-car will be back in championship contending form. Like I said, I think a lot of wins are going to come out of Brad Keselowski, and I think Brad Keselowski will continue to prove why he's still one of the best current NASCAR Cup Series drivers. And as he even is older age, he will continue to be a great NASCAR driver. Up next, we're going to talk about the 7-car for Spire Motorsports. Even though this driver's contract only currently goes to the 2022 season, I think Spire Motorsports overall really likes this driver, that being, of course, Corey LaJoie. I think Corey LaJoie will be at Spire Motorsports for a lot of the majority of the rest of his career. I think Corey LaJoie is a very, very solid driver. I also do think that Spire Motorsports will be more competitive by this point as well. I think that they will have potentially 1 or 2 wins up to this point. I think they'll have a lot more top 10s and a lot more top 15s. I think they're going to show a lot more speed, especially when they get to the next-gen car. I think that they're going to have a lot of progress. I think they're going to have a lot of speed. And I think at this point, even a few years down the road, I think Corey LaJoie will still continue driving the number 7 car for Spire Motorsports. Up next, we're going to talk about the 8 for Richard Childress Racing. Even though there has been potential rumors that this driver could leave Richard Childress Racing in the coming years, I think that this driver will remain. I think Tyler Reddick will remain in the 8 car full-time for Richard Childress Racing. Tyler Reddick has been one of the best drivers of Richard Childress Racing in a very, very long time. I also do think that he'll have quite a few victories in the Cup Series by now. I think that he's going to be one of the better drivers that is in with the next-gen car. And I think that he'll show a lot of speed. I think he'll be a championship contender at some point. I think RCR is going to have a lot more speed, especially this car. And I think that Tyler Reddick will continue driving the 8 car full-time for Richard Childress Racing in the 2024 season. Up next, we're going to talk about the 9 car for Hendrick Motorsports. This car will be driven, once again, no surprise, by Chase Elliott. At this point, Chase Elliott will have a very, very long contract, and now it's probably at least a 10-year contract extension with Hendrick Motorsports, probably through the 2032 season, which at this point, Chase Elliott will be around 35 to 36 years of age at that point when the 2022 season, 32 season rolls around. But he'll be driving in the number 9 car once again. I think he'll have potentially another championship up to this point as well, and I think that we'll continue a lot of great things from Chase Elliott. I think he'll at least win 15 to 20 more races by this point of 2024. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 10 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. I think that there are going to be changes at this car as well for 2024. I think that we are going to see another driver make a change from another organization. For 2022, we see that Harrison Burton is going to be driving the 1 car for Wood Brothers Racing. But I do think that there is going to be a move. I think the reason he's over at Ford is because of the fact that his sponsorship and because he's part of the KHI management group. Well, I think Kevin Harvick is going to have a lot more of a say in regards to Stewart-Haas Racing. And I think that Harrison Burton in the 2024 season is going to replace Eric Almirola in the 10 car for 2024. I think the Smithfield money is unfortunately going to drop. I think Smithfield is unfortunately at this point going to back out. You also remember that Eric Almirola is going to be 40 years old as well, and he's going to be a much older driver by this time of 2024. So to me, I think Stewart-Haas Racing is going to make a big move, and I think Harrison Burton will be driving a 10 car full-time in the 2024 season. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 11 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. There's going to be no changes here. I think Denny Hamlin will continue driving the number 11 car in 2024. But I do think that this will be one of the last years that Denny Hamlin will be racing. Denny Hamlin is going to be 44 years old by the time we conclude the 2024 season. I think at this point, Denny Hamlin is going to consider retirement to just move into the ownership group. Now, recently, over the last couple weeks, he did mention he might want to race till 2028, but I do think Denny Hamlin will retire at some point like 2025 or 2026. But I think Denny Hamlin will still continue racing in the number 11 car full-time in the 2024 season. Up next, we're going to talk about the 12 car for Team Penske. And I think that this still will be driven by Ryan Blaney. Now, Ryan Blaney currently has a contract through is believed to be the 2023 season. But I think that Ryan Blaney is going to improve by this point in 2024. And I think that Team Penske is going to keep Ryan Blaney in their system. And I think that Ryan Blaney will continue driving the 12 car in 2024. I think Ryan Blaney has that potential, but he's really never had that breakout season with multiple victories. But I think at some point, he's finally going to break through and have multiple victories in a season. I think that he will continue driving the number 12 car full-time in the 2024 season. Up next, we're going to talk about the 14 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. I don't think there's going to be any changes here as well. I think that this still will be continuing to be driven by Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe at this point by 2024, I think is going to be a much more improved and a much better driver. I think he'll win some races, not a ton of races, but I think by this point, the more experience he's gotten, the better he overall is going to be. And I think that Chase Briscoe is going to continue to improve and do some good stuff in the NASCAR Cup Series. He may be a championship contender for all we know, but I think that he'll be a much better driver by the time we reach the 2024 season, and he will have a lot more speed going forward as we get farther down the road. Up next, we're going to talk about the 15 for Rick Ware Racing. I think Rigor Racing is going to, first of all, I think is going to downsize to a 3-car operation by this point in 2024. However, I do think Rigor Racing is actually going to be a much more competitive organization. And I think the first driver they're going to choose is going to be Joey Gase. Joey Gase brings some funding from DonateLife.org. He brings some of that funding, and that's one of the big reasons why I think that he's going to be driving the number 15 car. But I do think that this car, like I said, will be a little more competitive when Joey Gase is in it. And I think at this point, we will see a lot more out of this 15 car for Rick Ware Racing. And this will be one of the 2 full-time cars for Rick Ware in 2024. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 16 car for College Racing, the second full-time College Racing car. This still is going to be driven by Justin Hilly. It's unknown how long his contract is with College Racing. He's believed to be potentially a 2 or 3 year deal with College Racing. He's going to be at this team. I think that he'll have a shot at winning some road course races and maybe some super speedway races as well. And I think he'll be contending for some victories as well. College will have also a shot at making the playoffs, especially potentially with both drivers in the 2024 season. And we will still see Justin Hilly driving the 16 car full-time by this point in the 2024 season. Up next, we're going to talk about the 17 car for Roush McMahon Racing. I still believe that this car will still be driven by Chris Buescher. I think Chris Buescher is a very, very talented driver. I think he'll be in a much better and improved Roush McMahon Racing team. I think he'll win some races. I don't think he's going to be absolutely a championship contender like Brad Keselowski, his teammate, is going to be, but I do think that Chris Buescher will be a very, very solid driver who will be able to have an opportunity to make the playoffs multiple years, and I think that he'll continue to show a lot of speed going forward as time continues on, and I think that he'll continue to prove why he's a very, very talented driver and that people should be looking out to him longer as time goes on. Up next, we're going to talk about the 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This, I think, will still be driven by Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch will be 39 years old, but I do think he'll be still very, very fast, even at the age of 39 years old. He'll be a lot older, well, starting 38, then going to be turning 39. But I do think Kyle Busch will be not considering retirement even at this point either. Now, I do think Kyle Busch is going to be thinking eventually about bringing up his Cup Series program because the charter system could be out of NASCAR by this point in 2024 going into 2025 season. I think Kyle Busch is going to be thinking about that. However, I do think Kyle Busch is going to re-sign a contract extension at some point in either 2021 or I think at some point in 2022. He is going to sign a long-term contract extension, and this will probably be his final contract extension with the Joe Gibbs Racing team. But I still think he'll continue driving for Joe Gibbs Racing at this point in 2024. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. I think that there is going to be a shocking announcement that is going to come out of this, and I think that Martin Truex Jr. is going to have his final season in 2023, so 2 years down the road. I think Martin Truex Jr. is going to retire from full-time Cup Series racing, and I think that Ty Gibbs, who is currently expected to run full-time in the Xfinity Series in 2022, is going to make the jump up from the Xfinity Series to the Cup Series in 2024 at the age of 22 years old. I have been extremely impressed with Ty Gibbs for my time watching him in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I think he will be contending for championships in Xfinity, and I think he'll be one of the few drivers that could win in their rookie season. I think he's a generational talent. He's done really, really well, and I think that he'll continue to prove himself and win a lot of Xfinity Series races in the Joe Gibbs Racing plant. And I think at this point, we will see Ty Gibbs take over for Martin Truex Jr. I think Martin Truex Jr. ends up retiring, and I think we'll no longer see Ty Gibbs Racing at this point by 2024. Actually, we'll see Martin Truex Jr. retire, Ty Gibbs take over. Up next, we're going to talk about the 20 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. And I think that this still will be continue to be driven by Christopher Bell. Toyota really likes Christopher Bell. Now, I believe his contract does go through the 2022 season, but I do think that with Toyota really backing him up and basically sponsoring for as long as they have and how much support they've had for Christopher Bell for as long as they've had, I think Christopher Bell is still going to continue driving for Joe Gibbs Racing up to this point in 2024. I think he'll potentially win a championship. I think he'll be very, very solid. And I think he's going to continue to be a much better driver as time goes on as he continues racing in the NASCAR Cup Series. Next, we're going to talk about the number 21 car for Wood Brothers Racing. I think we're going to see a very shocking announcement for the 2024 season. And I think that Todd Gillen is going to be driving in number 21 for Wood Brothers Racing. And I think the reason that Todd Gillen is going to end up in the number 21 car is I think in 2022 or 2023, he's going to end up at Team Penske driving for the organization, or he's going to end up at whenever Roush decides to make their move. But I think that he's going to end up full-time in the Cup Series. I think he's going to do very, very well in Xfinity, and I think that he'll make the decision to jump up to the Cup Series full-time in 2024. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 22 car for Team Penske, and I think this still will continue to be driven by Joey Logano. Now, Joey Logano's contract in the Cup Series currently goes to the 2023 season, but I do think that he's going to sign another pretty long-term contract extension probably throughout the rest of his career, especially how successful he's been with Team Penske. I think that Joey Logano is still going to continue driving for Team Penske at this point, and he will continue driving the number 22 for Team Penske in 2024. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 23 for 23XI Racing, the flagship car. This will still be driven by Bubba Wallace. The team is basically revolved around Bubba Wallace, and he's the one bringing a lot of sponsorship in the team, so that's the reason why they're going to have to still keep him in the ride. That being said, I think Bubba Wallace will have a couple of victories up to this point in his NASCAR Cup Series career, at least 2 or 3 career victories up to this point, and I think he'll be much more of a better driver up to this point, and I think he'll still be driving the number 23 car in 2024. Up next, we're going to talk about the 24 car for Hendrick Motorsports, and I believe this still will be driven by William Byron. William Byron over the last couple years has been getting better and better, and I do think that he is a generational talent and has proven it from his time racing in NASCAR in the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and the Truck Series. He has overall gone and done it and has been really impressive in his time racing. And to me, I think William Byron is going to continue to drive the 24 car, will win quite a few races, and I think that he'll still be driving the number 24 car for the 2024 season. I think he continues driving that car in 2024. Up next, we're going to talk about the first of 2 GMS cars for 2024. We'll get the implications of GMS racing in just a minute. But for the full-time car, the number 25 car, I think that this is going to be driven by Matt DiBenedetto once again. I think GMS is going to have Matt DiBenedetto on their team in 2022. I think that they're really overall going to like Matt DiBenedetto, and they're going to keep him in that program. I think at this point he also will potentially win. I think this team will be very, very solid. I think their first year they're going to kind of struggle, but I think as time goes on, the longer they're in the series, the better they are going to become. I think Chevy's going to put a lot more power into this team, and I think that we'll see Matty D continue driving the full-time car for the team. Next, we're going to talk about the number 26 car for GMS. This is going to be a part-time car, and this is going to be driven by Sheldon Creed. Sheldon Creed, I think, will jump up full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2022, whether it is with Kaulig Racing or whether it is with Junior Motorsports. I think he jumps up full-time from the Truck Series to Xfinity Series. I think he spends 2 years in the Xfinity Series, and I think that GMS is going to make the call to him, and I think with how much funding and backing he has, because I think he's still going to have that funding and backing, I think that he's going to end up driving part-time for a select number of races for Kaulig Racing in the 2024 season. I think we'll see Sheldon Creed in NASCAR in the Cup Series in 2024. Up next, we're going to talk about the second 23XI racing car, the number 32 car. I think that this car is going to be driven by the driver currently driving number 4 for Kyle Busch Motorsports, John Hunter Nemechek. John Nemechek, I think, is going to 23XI racing at some point, whether we like it or not. I think John Hunter has absolutely proven himself in his time at Kyle Busch Motorsports. I think he'll be full-time in the Xfinity Series for Joe Gibbs Racing by 2022 or 2023. And I think with no places to go, I think that John Hunter Nemechek is going to make a very good decision, and I think that he will go over to 23XI Racing's second program for the 2024 season. I think he's the one chosen for that program. Up next, we're going to talk about the first of 3 Front Row Motorsports cars in 2024. That's right. I think Front Row Motorsports is going to be better, and I think they're going to make a power play, and I think that they are going to have 3 cars in 2024. And the first one is going to be driven by Michael McDowell. I think Michael McDowell is a driver that's really impressed me, at least in 2021, and I think that he'll be much older. This actually will also, I think, be his final year in NASCAR overall in the Cup Series, whether it may run some part-time in the foreseeable future, but I think this will be his last year in the flagship number 34 car. That being said, I think that Michael McDowell will be a very solid driver up to this point, but he does bring out loves in that sponsorship, and I think he will win 1 or 2 more Cup Series races at this point, and Front Row will be a much more competitive team up this point. I think Michael McDowell will continue driving the number 34 car full-time for Front Row Motorsports in 2024. Up next, we're going to talk about the second Front Row Motorsports car, the number 36. I think that this car is going to be driven by Anthony Alfredo. I think Anthony Alfredo is going to become accustomed to the front row motorsports stuff. I think the longer he's in the car, the better he's going to be. I think a much more competitive driver. I think he'll make some Xfinity Series starts for some other organizations to get some more footing and even some Truck Series starts well to get him more footing and to get more experience as well. But I do think that we will see the 36 car be driven by Anthony Alfredo in the second of 3 full-time cars for Front Row Motorsports. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 37 car for JTG Doherty Racing. JT Doherty Racing is going to eventually re-expand to a 2-car operation because I believe that they are going to go to Toyota in 2022. And I think that for the first year, there'll be 1-car organization. But I think in 2022, now they did get funding like I mentioned, but are they going to have is the question. But I think that they're going to switch Toyota. And I think at this point, we are going to see Brandon Jones jump over to the number 37 car for this team. I think with the fact that this being a Toyota team at this point, I think that Brandon Jones also with that funding that he has from Menards and Rheem and all his other companies as well, with his dad basically managing the Rheem companies and all that stuff, I think that we are going to see a major power play, and I think Brandon Jones will be driving the number 37 car for this team going into the 2024 season. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 38 car for Front Row Motorsports, and I think that this is where Eric Almirola is going to go in 2024. I think Eric Almirola, with him kind of struggling, I think he's going to struggle latter points of his time as Stewart Haas Racing, and I think he's not going to be able to keep up with it. I think he's going to be downgraded to a little bit less to Front Row Motorsports. However, I think Front Row at this point, like I mentioned, is going to be a little more competitive than you think. And I think that he will continue driving, will be driving in potentially his final full-time Cup Series season around 2024 or 2025, whatever it is. But I do think at some point he's going to leave Stewart Haas Racing. And I think that Eric Almirola, I've had a very fear theory that he's eventually going to go to Front Row because he's been in Ford for such a long time. And I think he's going to go to Front Row at some point in 2000 by this point in 2024. Up next, we're going to talk about the 41 car for Stewart Haas Racing. I think that this still is going to be driven by Cole Custer. Cole Custer is son of Joe Custer. I do think Cole Custer will be a little more competitive by this point in 2024. If more experience he has, the better I think he's going to be. I think that he'll still be continuing to drive his car going forward as time goes on. I think we're still going to see Cole Custer in the number 41 car by this point in 2022. Because I think he gets better, and I think we'll see more out of him at this point by 2022. Or 24, excuse me. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 42 car for Trackhouse Racing. I still think this is going to be driven by Ross Chastain. Now, I think Ross Chastain will get a little bit better. I think Trackhouse also be a much more competitive team up to this point as well, running near the front on a lot more week-by-week basis, and I think that he'll continue to still show what he's been able to do. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins a couple races at this point, and I think Ross Chastain, the Watermelon Man, will also calm that aggression out of his down that he still has in his blood, and I think that he will continue driving the number 42 car for Trackhouse Racing with the sponsorship and more sponsorship coming into the Trackhouse team as well. I think he continues to drive the 42 car for the 2024 season. Up next, we're going to talk about the 43 car for Richard Petty Motorsports. I think that this car is still going to be driven by Eric Jones by this point in 2024. And I also think at this point out, they are going to be remaining a Chevy team. I think that they are going to continue to drive for Chevy. Unless a new manufacturer comes in, I think that they remain a Chevy organization. I don't think there's going to be much improvement from Eric Jones, to be honest with you. I don't think Richard Petty Motorsports is going to improve much. Maybe the next-gen car would help this team just a little bit. But I do think that Eric Jones still continues to drive for Richard Petty Motorsports. I think they just have enough funding to get by. And I think that he will continue driving for Richard Petty Motorsports in the 2024 season. Up next, we're going to talk about the third and final car for the Cup for the 2311 racing car for the 2024 season. I think at this point, they expand to a 3-car operation, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, and I think that this car is going to be driven by, in shocking fashion, Derek Kraus. Now, hear me out when I say Derek Kraus in the third 2311 racing car. I think Derek Kraus is a very, very talented driver. I know he hasn't done absolutely fantastic in his Truck Series starts. That being said, I think the longer he's in the Truck Series, the better he's going to be. I think he moves up to Xfinity, and I think that he's going to surprise a lot of people, whichever team he ends up going with. But I do think that he'll contend for a lot, and he also brings some funding as well. He brings Napa Energy funding, which I think could be a major, major factor into where he goes for that season. I also think at this point, Kurt Busch ends up retiring at this point as well, so Kurt Busch should be out of the team. So I think that Kurt Busch will look at Derek Kraus and say, hey, I might want to pick that guy to become the third car. I've had a theory maybe that he goes to this car, and I think that we'll see him in a third and final 2311 racing car for 2024. Up next, we're going to talk about the second JT Doherty racing car, the number 47. And I think that this car still, despite some rumors and things I've been told, I still think that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. at this point by 2024 is going to be driving this car once again through 2024. I think Stenhouse is a little bit more competitive. I think he shows a little bit more speed. I also think Stenhouse is a much better older and a much more composed and a much better veteran in the sport. And I think he'll still continue driving the number 47 car. And I think we'll see maybe some wins. And I think it will break that winning streak by this point as well, whether it's on a super speedway, whether it's on a different type of track. We will see Ricky Stenhouse Jr. continue driving the number 47 car for JTG Doherty Racing. Up next, we're going to talk about the 48 car for Hendrick Motorsports. Now, Alex Bowman currently has a contract that goes through the 2023 season. But I do think that Alex Bowman is going to perform well enough to continue driving for this team long term. And I think that Alex Bowman is going to drive the number 48 car at least for a very, very long time. And I think he'll still be driving the 48 car in 2024. I think Ali is going to recommit to this team for a lot longer than a lot of people think by this point in 2023. And I do think that Allison will continue driving. I think that's one of the reasons why he's still in NASCAR, because of that Ally sponsorship backing. And I think he will still be driving the number 48 car by this point in 2024. Up next, we're going to talk about the 51 car for Rick Ware Racing, the second and final full-time car for full-time drivers. I think that this car is still going to be driven by James Davison. James Davison, I think, makes the option to go full-time in 2022 as he's ran a lot of races, and I think that he'll become a very, very solid driver to the team. I think he'll be really, really competitive on road courses. I think we'll see some top 10s, top 15s from the Rick Ware camp with the next-gen car, and I think James Davison continues driving for them, and I think he's going to prove why he deserves to be here still up to this point, and I think that we will see James Davison continue driving the number 51 car in the 2024 season. Up next, we're going to talk about the rotation car for Rick Ware Racing and the third and final car for Rick Ware, the number 52 car. I think that there are going to be two drivers that are going to drive this car. I think it's going to be Josh Bilicki, and I think it's going to be Cody Ware. I think Cody Ware is going to be focusing mainly on IndyCar. However, when IndyCar doesn't happen, I think he's going to drive this car. I think Josh Bilicki is going to be the other driver of this car when IndyCar is not going on. And with IndyCar potentially expanding at that point, I think Josh Bilicki and Cody Ware are going to split the ride. And I think that those will be the two drivers driving the number 52 car in the 2024 season. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 66 for MBM Motorsports. Despite what a lot of people think, I think MBM Motorsports is still going to be afloat and is still going to be around by this point in 2024. I think that they are going to be around for a little bit longer than a lot of people think. And I think that Timmy Hill is still going to be driving for MBM Motorsports. MBM really likes him. Carl Long really likes him. And Timmy Hill likes where he's sitting. And I think that he'll continue driving for MBM Motorsports going forward in the 2024 season. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 77 car for the Kaulig Racing. Now, this car, I think, is going to have one driver, but I think it's going to be a part-time car. And I think that this car will still be driven by AJ Allmendinger. AJ, I think, will be a good road course racer. I think he's still going to be racing, giving information on the road courses and helping out the younger drivers in the road course program. Now, maybe they'll get someone like a Josh Berry, perhaps, to drive this car and give a little bit updates on the ovals. I'm not exactly sure, but I think that AJ Allmendinger is going to be driving the number 77 car part-time for Kaulig Racing with some funding. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 78 car for BJ McLeod Motorsports and Live Fast Motorsports. I think that this will be driven by BJ McLeod. However, I do think that there is potential we'll see a couple other drivers in this car. I think that there will be consideration for this team. If they're not improved, I think they will be a decent team overall. But I don't think that they're going to be a championship caliber team unless someone comes in with funding. But I think at this point, we're still going to see BJ McLeod driving the 78 car for Live Fast Motorsports. Up next, we're going to talk about the first of two Junior Motorsports cars. I think Junior Motorsports is going to have two cars. I think they're going to have one full-time car, and I think that they're going to have a part-time car. The first car is the number 83, and I think that this is going to be driven by Noah Gragson. I think Noah Gragson is going to be full-time in the Cup Series with Junior Motorsports in 2023. I think he resigns with Junior Motorsports for 2022. I think he gets a win by this point. I think he resigns with it for 2022. And then I think they jump up to the Cup Series. And I think that it'll be Noah Gragson. He'll be driving the number 83. He brings that funding from Bass Pro Shops and Black Rifle Coffee. And I think that's going to be a major, major implication to why he will be driving full-time for the team. I think he'll be driving the number 83, the first of two Junior Motorsports cars. The second car, the 88 car, is going to be the part-time car. Now, I think there is a chance we may see Dale Jr. running one-off for this team. However, I think that they're going to run a lot more races than you think to get a certain driver developed and ready to go for the future. And I think that this car is going to be driven by Sam Mayer. Sam Mayer is running currently for Junior Motorsports in the NASCAR Xfinity Series right now. Pretty much full-time. He's taking over full-time around the time of Pocono. But I think that he'll go full-time in 2022. Then I think he'll also race in 2023 to get a little bit more experience. I don't think he's going to jump straight at the Cup in 2023. I think that he'll drive part-time in 2024, maybe full-time. But I think that we'll see Sam Mayer in the Cup Series in the number 88 car for Junior Motorsports. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 96 for Gaunt Brothers Racing. I think this car is going to go full-time. I think that, however, there's going to be a split between two drivers who are going to be driving the number 96. I think Daniel Hemrick, with his Poppy Bank sponsorship, will drive half the races. And I think Chandler Smith, as I think he'll be up in Cup, we'll be up in Xfinity at this point, I think that it'll be a split between Daniel Hemrick and Chandler Smith. I think Chandler Smith is going to be more equipped for the Xfinity Series cars than the trucks, and I think he'll perform extremely well in the Xfinity Series. Daniel Hemrick has that Poppy Bank sponsorship, like I mentioned, and I think he'll still be around in NASCAR at this point because of that sponsorship. I think we are going to see Daniel Hemrick and Chandler Smith drive the number 96 car for Gaunt Brothers Racing as split in 2024. And finally, we're going to talk about the number 99 for Trackhouse Racing, that being Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez is basically, they're going to revolve around him. He's the long-term driver for this team, the long-term plan for this team going forward. And I think Daniel Suarez will be competitive. I think he'll have some wins. And I think at this point, he'll still be driving number 99. How many wins he gets, I'm not exactly sure at this point how many wins he'll end up getting. But I do think at this point, Daniel Suarez will still continue driving the number 99 for Trackhouse Racing. So with a lot of funding, I think Trackhouse will be more competitive at this point. And I think that we'll continue to see Daniel Suarez drive the number 99 for Trackhouse Racing in 2024. So anyway, that is for today's NASCAR predictions video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications so you're notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Support page on the link description below for that. And comment your predictions for the 2024 season in regards to driver land. Do you think my predictions are nuts, or do you think my predictions are somewhat accurate? And you think that a lot of predictions I have, do you think are going to happen? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content. Take care, everybody.